You are listening to Dove Valley Deep Divers with Erick Trickel
and Lance Sanderson.
Ball comes out of the hands of Newton. It's on the ground, picked up by T.J. Ward at the 4-yard line. Vaughn Miller did it again.
On Overtime Media.
And it looks like we are live. See if I can't add the Facebook group into this really fast. Looks like we're live there. Looks like we're live pretty much everywhere we're supposed to be for right this second. Mile high hello, everybody in Broncos country, and welcome into another episode of the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. I'm your host, Lance Sanderson, and joining me as always is my good friend and colleague. He's your Denver Broncos insider and Mile High Huddle senior NFL draft analyst, the one and only Erick Trickel. Erick, there's been a massive onslaught of news this week regarding the Denver Broncos, with John Elway obviously stepping down, Joe Ellis with his comments about potentially leaving the front office as far as his executive role in March of 2022. Just an amazing plethora of news for us to break down. We're going to get into this here in just a few minutes. But Erick, how you doing, my man? What have you been up to?
Not much, man. Just living life, trying to get, now that the season's over, really shifting focus onto draft stuff, even though I'm working on it all year round. Working on getting all that content, all that sweet, wonderful content out there for you guys that hopefully you guys appreciate and enjoy and all that jazz. But just working on getting all that stuff done and best I can and as fast as I can. Yeah, no, I hear you on that. I've actually really kind of started diving into some of these prospects and getting a better look at all of them. I usually start about a month prior to this, but with the baby and everything like that and everything ongoing with the holidays and whatnot, haven't really got a chance to really get started. So over the last few days, I've really put in a whole lot of work and starting to develop my 5 guys for number 9 that we're going to be debuting to you guys here in a couple of weeks. Everybody, the entire podcast network is going to get a big part of that. So really excited to get, there's a lot of draft content we've got coming for you guys. But for today, obviously the Broncos looking for a new general manager with the news that John Elway is taking a higher position up, stepping down from the general manager role, beginning this transition to life potentially without John Elway in the fold, period. And we've got the 5 candidates for the GM position, at least as of right now. The Broncos have interviewed a couple of guys today from the sound of it. We'll take a look at everybody. But first, actually, you know what? And then after that, we're going to dive into the all-pro rosters where we can actually kind of breathe some more information for you guys, get some snubs that we thought that we potentially should have seen on there, and also pound our chest just a little bit more for you guys. But before we get started on that, guys, make sure make sure, as always, guys, first things first, follow the show at DVDD_pod on Twitter. It's the easiest way to keep up with what's going on with the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. Also follow me at Sanderson MHH, and for Erick at Erick Trickel while you guys are at it. Also, at Mile High Huddle, that's the mother account where you're going to get breaking news and analysis on your Denver Broncos from all your favorite personalities like myself, like Erick, Nick and Carl as well, Luke Patterson, Chad, Zach, the whole crew. Mile High Huddle at Mile High Huddle is where you're going to find all of that. If you guys are financially able to do so, and not necessarily begging you to do so, but if you guys would like to, another way a great way to support the show, huddleuppod.com. That's the merch tent. Get yourself a hat, t-shirt, face mask, coffee cup. They've got hoodies, something for the guys, something for the gals. If you want a onesie for your baby, I already got that. My young boy, Caven, it looks really good in it, by the way. Facebook supporters, become a subscriber, or a supporter, Facebook.com/Mile High Huddle. Click that blue Become a Supporter button. That's another great way. And if you're not financially able or willing to do something like that, the 3 easiest things that everybody should be doing by this particular point is these 3 things. Subscribe wherever you're watching, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, doesn't matter. Subscribe to Mile High Huddle. Like every video that you guys see and share it. If you love it, share it, get it out in front of as many people as humanly possible. And before we get going, guys, as always, tonight's live stream podcast is brought to you by sportsbetting.com, Broncos country. Gambling is now legal in the state of Colorado, and if you're looking to make watching your favorite sports a little bit more interesting, sportsbetting.com is your no-brainer decision for sports betting, and here is why. They have sharp odds and a low juice. They have in-house bookmakers, meaning that they're not a third-party provider of odds, and that reduced juice means that they have the best prices. They have hassle-free bonuses with a one-time rollover, meaning that the bonus money is yours after you bet one time. time. They have 24/7 live customer support with always a real person in the United States. You're not going to get somebody overseas or somebody you can't understand. It's always a real person in the United States, which makes your customer support needs so much more easier, I'm telling you. But also, guys, here's the kicker. Right now, after you make your first deposit, sportsbetting.com will match it up to $750. That's $750 in free bet credits. Plus, right now, with the NBA season tipping off and we've got games already going, the Nuggets just lost a brutal game last night to the Dallas Mavericks. You'll also get a $25 in free bet credits. So, guys, if you want to line your pockets a little bit, start off this new year on the right foot, head on over to sportsbetting.com/milehighhuddle. That's sportsbetting.com/milehighhuddle and capitalize on up to $750 in free bet credits and start this year off on the right foot.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
All right. Now, Eric, obviously with the Broncos right now and the general manager candidates, the five guys we have right now are George Payton of the Minnesota Vikings front office, Champ Kelly, who was a former Bronco in the scouting department and also is now the assistant director of player personnel in Chicago, Terry Fontenot with the Saints, Brian Stark, a Broncos area scout right now, and Dave Ziegler with the Patriots. It's kind of interesting. There's a lot of connections here, and there's a lot of connections to be made. I want your opinion, though. Who is your number one guy for the Denver Broncos? Who's the guy that you want to see him bring in?
The guy I want to see them bring in the most is Champ Kelly. And I see in the chat people are talking about how they want no part of the whole Mitchell Trubisky trade up and everything, which is understandable.
Yeah.
But Champ Kelly wasn't the only voice behind that. He probably didn't have that much of a say. That was very much a head coach, and the general manager's name escapes me. But it was very much those two guys wanted to do it. And I'm sure he was like, yeah, let's do it, but still. But the biggest thing is you can't judge an assistant director of player personnel or whatever his position was back then. I can't remember exactly what it was off the top of my head. You might be able to better say that. Is you can't judge a guy based off of one move. Look at some of the other stuff that the Bears have done. Some of their draft picks have been really good picks. They've got a couple really good guys on that offensive line that they draft, primarily the interior. They've got some pretty solid defenders and just some other moves. And then that big trade for Khalil Mack as well. The biggest thing about Champ Kelly is he's aggressive. And I want an aggressive general manager. That's what made John Elway so successful, was he was aggressively pursuing Peyton Manning. He went and aggressively pursued Aqib Talib, DeMarcus Ware, TJ Ward, and then Emmanuel Sanders. Very aggressive on those fronts, and that's what I want. Also with George Kelly is that he had his hands in a little bit of everything. He worked with pro scouting, he worked with college scouting, he's worked with contracts, he's worked with pro acquisition, all these aspects of it. And that's what you want to get out of your general manager. Somebody who has experience in everything, because they are going to be involved in everything.
So to kind of piggyback off of what you said there, as far as going and getting Peyton Manning and going and getting DeMarcus Ware and Aqib Talib and Emmanuel Sanders and TJ Ward, you know who was at that time working with the Denver Broncos? Champ Kelly. Champ Kelly was actually he was an area scout, and he worked up to the assistant director of pro personnel from 2007 until 2015 when he signed on with the Bears. He was a big part of that front office that went out and aggressively went and improved the team with those big major free agent acquisitions. Now, to give you guys a little bit more history on Champ Kelly, obviously he was with the Broncos, but prior to that, he was a contract advisor, the general manager, and the wide receiver coach in the United Indoor Football League, and for the Lexington Horsemen, I believe is what the team was called. They actually won the United Bowl in his last season there. He interviewed today for about 3 hours, but after being in the United Indoor Football League, he worked with the Broncos as an area scout in 2007, worked up to the director of pro personnel as well, where in 2015, he transferred over to Chicago, where they hired him as the director of pro scouting and then promoted him to the assistant director of player personnel in 2017. With Chicago, his main responsibilities were grading the top 100 draft prospects. So, Eric, I know you're going to like that. He led the team's efforts in unrestricted free agency and advanced scouting of upcoming opponents. And also, he worked with Vic Fangio. So there's an obvious connection here, not only to the Broncos, but with the Broncos head coach. And with the aggression and with his aggressive moves in free agency, and also in the draft, he was a part of the Mitchell Trubisky trade. Even though they picked the wrong guy, they probably should have taken Desean Watson or even Patrick Mahomes, obviously, in that particular spot. He was a part of we're going to trade up and we're going to go get our guy. He was a part of the Khalil Mack trade as well. I really value your opinion on that, and I agree with you there. With the Broncos picking number 9 overall and them not potentially having that answer at the quarterback position in Drew Lock, we're just still not sure at this particular point. Could you see Champ Kelly coming in, being the general manager, and then orchestrating a trade up to go get a Justin Fields or a Trey Lance or a Zach Wilson within the top 10?
I definitely think it's possible. Mike Kliss on his podcast actually said that the way from the sense he's getting is that Denver will be aggressive and go get their quarterback in the draft. And he said that on his podcast, I believe, last night, which that's pretty eye-opening. I mean, everybody knows that as much grief as Kliss gets from the widespread media in Denver and even Bronco fans and everything for being a Broncos lapdog, that's what he is. He's getting his information directly from the team. And and I got to give him credit. He does such a good job of passing this stuff off as opinion. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's what he's hearing. I wouldn't be surprised if there are some coaches in that organization that don't feel that Locke is the guy and they want a general manager to step up. It wouldn't be surprising if part of the reason why Elway is stepping back is because he couldn't be unbiased when it comes to Drew Lock because he was such a Drew Lock fan and still is. That's all speculation here and not saying that's the case or whatever. But if that is, then yeah, I could see him coming in and talking with Vic Fangio and being like, all right, we got to improve the quarterback position. We have the talent on the roster. I mean, the offensive weapons everybody knows about and getting Cortland Sutton back. The defense, they outperformed this last year despite all the injuries they've dealt with, and they have a chance to get a lot of those guys back, which, getting sidetracked here for a second, the aggressiveness from Kelly, that could help them in retaining guys like Von Miller, Shelby Harris, and Justin Simmons. So that is something to keep an eye on as well and keep that defense built up. And then it just comes down to the quarterback position. So that's what the issue. That's one thing to consider about when it goes with it. But I do think that depending on what Fangio says, that Kelly would come in and be very willing to be aggressive and go up and get his guy.
Yeah, I agree with that. And that's probably the first 3 questions that you have to ask in any of these interview processes. The Broncos, obviously, they interviewed George Payton, the Vikings guy, earlier today. Champ Kelly just finished up a little over an hour ago from the sound of it. But in those interviews, you'd have to think that the first 3 questions that you're going to ask are, what are you going to do with the quarterback position? What do you think about Drew Lock? Then how about Justin Simmons? What do you think is his future with this team? And then the third one has to be Von Miller. And then after that, you kind of work your philosophy and stuff like that. And like you said, Champ Kelly being aggressive and wanting to keep things together and not necessarily blow everything up, still go get his guys. Champ Kelly could be a big part in that. Now, another one here that I really want your opinion on is Terry Fontenot. He is the assistant director of pro personnel with the New Orleans Saints. He's spent his last 16 seasons there, the last 6 in his position right now. 7 seasons as a pro scout, where he prepped the team for unrestricted free agency and waiver wire acquisitions. He attended Stanford's business school for the executive education program for upcoming executive managers as requested by the New Orleans Saints. But the thing that I'm seeing here is that his biggest thing was recommending player acquisitions, evaluations, and players in all pro leagues, including the Canadian Football League, advanced scouting of upcoming opponents, and a lot of things within just the NFL circle rather than going out to the college staff. What do you think about Terry Fontenot?
So I'm just going to call him Saints guy because for some reason I just can't get the name down. It's not that hard, but I always want to say Fontenot, and I know that's not right. But anyway, so the Saints guy is, I like him. I like him quite a bit. I like what he has been part of with the Saints when it comes to those free agents contracts they've given out. They did get into some hot water, but that comes from a bunch of restructuring, which that's been a big problem there is with the contracts more so than anything. But my concern is that his experience has been all on the pro side. Yeah. So when it comes to the college aspect of it, the draft and everything, what's he like there? We don't have any evidence really of it. While the Saints have had some stellar draft classes, he's been the assistant director of player personnel, right? So this is the closest he's gone to the draft after spending most of his time working as a pro scout, working in the pro scouting department, everything. So that is my one concern for him. He is actually my number 2 choice because of how widely respected he is. I've heard nothing but good things about him and how much respected he is, not by just people on the Saints, but people around the NFL, which sometimes can be a little bit, problematic. Vance Joseph was very well respected, but we'll hope that that's not the case. But like with Chad Kelly, I don't want to hold just the lack of work in the college thing against him, but it is something that is concerning. But yeah, I really like him. I like what he can bring. And again, talking about those contracts that he's worked on with Von Miller and his option with Justin Simmons being a free agent, with Shelby Harris being a free agent, he can come in and he can be really aggressive going there. And on top of that, he's been around the Saints for so long, and seeing what they've been able to do with Drew Brees playing at an elite level for so long, that again, if they decide that Drew Lock's not the guy, they can come in and be very aggressive and go get that quarterback and say, hey, we've got the pieces around that position, but we have to better the quarterback. We'll see what happens. Again, just speculation that's going to happen. It's just basically it's at this point, it's that Drew Lock's job isn't 100% safe. So we'll see what happens with that going forward. And the new general manager is going to have a big part in what happens, obviously.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
Yeah, absolutely. And MRM 5897 coming in here with a high quality comment here. If the Saints have the deepest roster, then Fontenot should be the wise decision. But who knows? Elway can't even step completely away and wants Vic to have a voice in the decision, which is scary. Now, I want to dispute the last part of that because having Vic Fangio, he's coming back next year, so that we're just going to have to get over that. That's already a done deal. If you're going to have Vic Fangio come back and continue out with the remainder of his contract, why wouldn't you want him to be a part of that decision-making where he's going to be talking with this guy and working with this general manager? It's not a dead relationship by any stretch of the imagination. Now,
I just want to throw this out there real quick, is that successful teams have a very good working relationship between their head coach and their general manager. The ones that are most unsuccessful and continuously have unsuccessful seasons are those where the head coach has the loudest voice or the GM has the loudest voice. Now, it's one thing to have the final say, but those two voices got to be everything, because you got the coach on the field. He's going to know more about the scheme and everything like that and what he needs. Then the general manager can be in charge of overseeing the contract, the fit, the financial fit, all that stuff like that. So they got to come together. So I don't think that it's a bad thing that Vic Fangio not stepping away. And I do think from everything that I've heard that Elway he'll be there as a opinion, but he's not going to step in and he's not going to override the decisions they make.
Yeah, unless it's something major, like we're going to hand out $45 million guaranteed or make a trade for Desean Watson, which isn't going to happen, I don't think. Something like that. Like there's some big decision-making he's going to be a big part of. But for the most part, it sounds like he is actually going to step away from the day-to-day football operations and just let the general manager do his thing and kind of phase himself out of the Broncos front office. But before we continue on here, guys, I do want to we've got super chats and great questions coming in here. There's a couple that came in before we even got started from Kenneth Booker. We'll grab the first one first. What are your top 5 most fun to watch players in this draft? And Eric, we talked about this a little bit before we came on. This is a very subjective question. To me, as far as a guy that I really like to watch, and especially to see the growth of him transitioning from one position to another and then excelling on both sides of the formation, Joseph Osai, the edge defender from the University of Texas right now, he's my guy. That's the guy that I really like the Broncos to have, particularly because if Von Miller does come back, you don't have to play Osai on the edge right away. He can play off ball as an off ball linebacker where he drops back into coverage very well, at least the athleticism to be able to do so, understands his depths, moves well vertically and moves well horizontally as well. He's a high quality edge defender as well, because there's a lot of refinement in his hand technique. His hands are never dead. He's always moving his hands back and forth, trying new rip and counter moves to try to create some separation. And he doesn't ever get bullied by offensive linemen. He does a really good job of separating in the running game. So to me, that guy right now, as far as the technical refinement of his game, he doesn't have quite the high-end athletic upside that I'd really like to see from a guy like that. But if you want a perfect scheme fit for what the Broncos want to do with their off-ball linebacker and then have the versatility to slide him up into the front after Von Miller phases himself out, or if Bradley Chubb, the Broncos don't extend that fifth-year option to Bradley Chubb, Osai is a perfect replacement there. So that's the guy that I would really like to see the Broncos take at number 9. You'll hear a lot more about this later. Another guy that I really like, Jalen Darden, I think North Texas wide receiver, jitterbug kind of a guy, really quick, decent route runner. I think there's some more refinement to work there. The problem is he's small. He's not a very big guy. I do like the jitterbug aspect of him there a lot. I like Caleb Farley as well. His transitions and his hip technique is very good, very smooth back pedal. He's very patient in his back pedal, doesn't like to dictate where guys are going. So just the top 3 for me, that's probably where I'd like to go as far as the most fun for me to watch. Eric, what do you think?
So for me, I think that the funnest guy it is for me to watch is Kyle Pitts out of Florida.
There you go.
Dude is just a freak of nature athlete at the tight end position. And with as dangerous as he is as a receiver, he's actually not that bad of a blocker. If he progresses and develops as he should, because he still needs some work, obviously, in the NFL, he's going to be one of those guys that plays in the NFL and he goes back and be a tight end that I watch every year during the summer and just look at the technique and just enjoy. And because you can learn a lot from them, and that helps you when scouting college players and to see how far away from where they probably should be. Another guy talking about a couple edge rushers is I really, really like Aziz Ogilari. Mm-hmm. I love watching him because of just the sheer athleticism he brings. I do wish he was bulked up a little bit and a little bit stronger.
Yeah.
But sometimes his athleticism just carries him so far. Yeah. His ability to bend the edge, it's a thing of beauty. And I think that if Denver moves on from Von Miller to get that more athletic guy, I can see him be the fit and work with him in the weight room to try to bulk up a little bit. And then Jason Owe, talk about a freak athlete as well. He made Bruce Feldman's freak list, top 100 freak list, and it is said that he ran a 4.3440 at 260 pounds, 6'5" at Penn State last spring. So, and if he runs anything near that at the combine, his stock is going to soar up. You can use him in so many ways on your defense, inside, outside, on the edge. You can even drop him into coverage depending on what type of where at. I mean, obviously you don't want him taking a tight end deep down the middle, but kind of watching those flats and those short hook zones and everything like that, you can kind of have him do that. And that's what makes him so much fun to watch. A lot of more athlete than football player, but oh man, Jason Owe is so much fun. And then my last 2 guys for the top 5, Paris Ford, just because he's such a versatile athlete, versatile player in the secondary, reminds me so much of what Kareem Jackson does and can be so much better than that. And then Elijah Vera Tucker, USC interior offensive lineman, moved out to offensive tackle, I believe left tackle this year. And just the technique is rather far along for most college players coming out. I like that. I love the versatility. And quite frankly, I love offensive line play, and his is probably not the cleanest, but some of the cleaner stuff with so much upside that he has that's so obvious on tape that makes him fun to watch for me anyways.
Yeah. I was watching Owe the other day, and you can see the athleticism pop. I really wish that he had some more refinement in his hand placement, though, because that seems to be an issue for him. He doesn't have a lot of counter moves, and that's another thing with Aziz Ogilari, but that's a coachable thing, and you can work with that high-end athleticism. I actually have so Osai is my number 1 edge right now just because of, like I said, the versatility with him and the refinement in his hand technique and stuff like that. Gregory Rousseau and Ogilari and Owe make up 2, 3, and 4 in no necessarily specific order right now. Rousseau with the crazy length probably gets the nod there, but he's got the athleticism. Ogilari and Owe, with the hand placement, I don't necessarily like that right now. I think Owe has more power than Ogilari does right now, so I'll give him a little bit of a nod. But as far as with Ogilari, the athleticism and the bend that he does possess, it's just great. Those guys are incredibly fun to watch. Let's move on with another super chat here. I had another one here closer. Mohammed Badri with a super sticker. Unfortunately, John isn't with us tonight, guys. John KMHH, follow him on Twitter. Bawana Beast, as you guys know and love him, the man behind the sticks. So we can't pull that super sticker and actually get it on the screen. We apologize for you that tonight. Muhammad, thank you for joining us as always. Thank you to everybody for joining us. I've got Darab Qureshi, I think is how you pronounce that last name. Chris Clark as well. CC MRM. We gave you a shout out earlier. Wolf Sky 9, Chase Wellner in the house as well. WE coming in here with a super chat really fast. Are you expecting the new GM to trade up or draft the best quarterback available at 9? I'm expecting Trey Lance to be available. Eric, I'm going to let you take this away, but I do want to drop a hint here. There is a person in this staff that is going to highlight Trey Lance at number 9 here in the next couple of weeks, and I'll let him do that. But Eric, what do you think about Trey Lance?
I really like Trey Lance, and I can definitely see the enticement there with him. And I don't want to talk about him too much, obviously, for something that we have coming up here in a couple weeks. But I mean, if he's there, I could see Denver doing it. I don't think that I wouldn't say I'm expecting them to trade up, but I'm not writing it off as much as I was before John Elway and Matt Russell stepped down and retired. In the case of Matt Russell, I think that the chances of it aren't like extremely high, but they're definitely higher than what they were. And I think a lot's going to depend on what general manager they go and bring in, obviously, as to how aggressive they get. And we talked about that with the Saints guy and the Champ Kelly, that they could be a little bit more aggressive in going and getting their guy because of what they've been around with their respective teams, the Bears and the Saints. So again, not expecting it, but I do think that it's a lot more likely now than it was before.
Yeah, it's hard to me because Trey Lance did play at North Dakota State, so lower level college school. He didn't play this year except for one game. The sample size is really small. You see the big tools, the big traits, really decent athlete as well. And I like him as far as a runner moving downhill, and he's not scared to take a shot. The big arm talent pops as well. But at the same time, having that kind of a guy, if you're looking to replace the quarterback position in Drew Lock or even create some kind of a competition, I don't expect him to be able to come in and step in day one and upset Drew Lock for that starting position just because he is so raw. Now, long term, if the Broncos were in a position where they had a veteran, say like the Indianapolis Colts, for example, like they have Phillip Rivers, where a veteran, they might be potentially looking to move on from Phillip Rivers this year. But if they bring him back, or even Sean Payton with the Saints and Drew Brees in that situation, where he can sit and grow and kind of learn from a guy for a year or two, that would be great. The Broncos aren't in a position to be able to take that kind of a player right now, and with Lance being as raw as he is, that sets his team back another year, and I don't think that they have the time or the luxury of being able to do something like that. That's just my personal opinion on that.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
Let's see here. MRM coming in here again with a $2 super. Thanks, man. We appreciate you for that. Let's see. Goodness me, oh way, he says. That's CC. No on Watson, way too expensive. I fully agree there.
I want to get this out there real quick with Watson, talk about it. If the Broncos decide to go be aggressive and go get a better quarterback, they'd be stupid not to look into Desean Watson.
I agree.
Because of what he did with the Texans this year. I know they didn't win a lot of games, but it's not his fault. Like, he put up plenty of points. He did a lot of great things for them with next to nothing around him.
Well, hell,
defense completely fell apart and faltered, and just so many issues there, along with many other issues. Now, I don't think the Texans eventually make him available, but if they do, and the Broncos don't look into it, not saying if they don't get him or anything like that, if they don't even look into it, they're dumb, and everybody there should be fired.
Yeah, you should at least call on that. I mean, as you were saying, with the lack of talent around him, they traded away to DeAndre Hopkins as number one wide receiver. Brandon Cooks was in and out of the lineup. They released Kenny Stills halfway through the season. I mean, his number one wide receiver there for a while was Kiki Cutie. Like, are you serious? Excuse me. The one thing that, even despite the lack of weapons and everything like that, and the lack of help from his defense, Desean Watson led the league in passing yards this season. Like, he's a top 5 quarterback. There's really no question about it, unless you want to throw. I mean, I don't even necessarily know that Stafford in there. Stafford would be a good option there. Ryan Tannehill maybe, but still, with the athleticism of Desean Watson, the problem is the cost and where the Broncos are at right now. Yeah, they definitely need to go get a quarterback, but there's still some holes on this roster, long-term holes that need to be addressed. And if you're going to talk about giving away 2 or 3 first-round draft picks on top of 2 or 3 second-round draft picks, if it's 2 1s and 2 2s, if that's the final asking price, I'm on that all day. No question, 2 1s and 2 2s. If it's a third number one, I'm not about that. Three number ones is too much for me.
I'd do 4. Easily, I would do 4. Deshaun Hamilton is a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. Getting him makes the Broncos playoff contenders.
Yeah.
He will put them into the playoffs with the weapons that they have on offense. Yes, the defense has issues, and yes, losing those picks hurt, but you can still go find and get talent, and having your quarterback solved gives you more versatility to go get that elsewhere. So I would do 4 first-round picks and a couple seconds in a heartbeat. A heartbeat to get a quarterback of the caliber of Desean Watson.
So here's the question that I've got for you, and this was something I heard on the radio today. 2 guesses as to where I heard it. Number 9 overall, Jerry Jeudy, and 3 extra first-round picks. Would you pull the trigger?
Number 9 overall, 3 firsts, and Jerry Jeudy. No, because you don't want to take away from the weapons that you're offering.
That's what I said too.
Somebody in the chat real quick says, if he can't make Houston better, how can he make Denver Super Bowl bound? Because Denver's biggest issue this last year was inconsistency from the quarterback position. Houston's biggest issue was the lack of talent they had.
Yep.
Deshaun Watson was far and away their best offensive player, and if you take him out of there, they're pushing going 0-16.
Yeah,
he won them as many games as they did.
Yeah, that's very true. And like I said, he just led the league in passing yards, so it's not an issue of him being able to play. Now, you can't drag your team to victories. Well, he did drag his team to 4 victories, so let's just end that conversation there. But also, another big shortcoming from this Broncos team came from the injuries on the defensive side of the football. If you guys, we're down to, 6, 7, and 8 cornerback? Well, I guess cornerback 3 and Ojemudia technically, because that's where he started at. But you've got Parnell Motley playing extended snaps. They brought in Devontae Bosby, who was struggling. Who else? I don't even remember the names of the guys that were playing at the cornerback position because they were that bad. Nate Hairston, there's another one. So cornerback 3, 6, 7, and 8, or whatever the hell it is. It's atrocious. If you keep, say for whatever reason, the Broncos want to run it back defensively, and they want to keep AJ Bouye, they want to keep Jarrell Casey, they want to keep Von Miller in tow. Everybody stays healthy. If you implant Deshaun Watson, regardless of the contract, I know it's not going to work that way. But if you put Deshaun Watson in this team right now over Drew Lock, there's no question this team wins 10 games. No question at all. They might even be the number 2 seed in the AFC. That's the kind of play that you're going to get from a Deshaun Watson. Now, Kenneth Booker coming in here on another super chat before we get it back to the GM conversation. If Pitts falls to number 9, I dream him and Fant together. Now, Eric, drop some knowledge really fast.
So, as I was saying earlier, I really like Pitts, and pairing him and Noah Fant together would make this offense extremely hard to stop. Now, if Denver does decide to roll it back with Drew Lock, I think the biggest change that needs to happen is Pat Shurmur needs to use more 2 tight end sets. I said this before, and this is one reason why I won't completely rule out Denver drafting a tight end. I don't think it happens, but if they are rolling it back with Drew Lock, they definitely got to look this way. Nick Bennett was struggled for a large portion of the year. He started turning around a little bit towards the end, but he still wasn't good enough. He's looked like a solid number 3 guy. 2 tight end sets, you want to have at least 3 or 4 deep. And I just don't trust the other guys, Troy Fumagalli, Jake Butt. I just don't trust those guys. And Pat Shurmur's scheme, when he does use 2 tight ends, he's shown how easy he can make things for the quarterback and for them. Man, getting an athlete like him and pairing him with Fant, especially with him, his ability as a blocker, you make this offense a lot more dangerous. And you're actually helping Drew Lock because you're putting him in something that he's comfortable with and actually executed out of really well. Another tight end, of course, would be Pat Freiermuth out of Penn State, who I like a little bit more in that case if they were to do that because he is a little bit of a better blocker than Pitts.
Yes.
So he doesn't have as much athleticism, not that as big of a receiving freak as Pitts is. You kind of want that balance with Noah Fant there. But, man, just either of those 2 with Fant. If Denver went this route, that is the biggest key. If Denver went this route, would be amazing. Albert O, he still has so much to work on with his route running and his blocking that he is just not a guy to be that number 2 guy. Right now, he's probably that number 4 guy. Maybe in a few years, maybe he can be that 2 or 3 guy, but right now he still has a long ways to work on. He showed this year that he has a very one-way skill set that just hurts the offense with taking away versatility, despite how helpful he can be in that one area.
Yeah. So let's get back to this general manager conversation because Facebook user coming in here. I apologize for not being able to see your name. For whatever reason, there's a setting in Facebook that you need to allow certain permissions for us to be able to see your name. I'll go back and check this out and respond to you in kind as well. But as far as the GM that's best for us, we've already run through Champ Kelly and Terry Fontenot, but the guy that the Broncos interviewed first, at least earlier today, is George Payton, who has spent a long time with Minnesota Vikings general manager Rick Spielman. I mean, literally going back to the late 90s, I believe, is when George Payton was first brought into the NFL. He worked with Chicago back then and then worked with Miami after that. And he spent the last 13 seasons as the assistant general manager to Rick Spielman in Minnesota. His primary focus is coordinating the scouting and personnel functions in pro scouting department, and he helps with college scouting department to prepare for the NFL draft. I'm not exactly sure the extent of that kind of a knowledge, but the interesting thing about George Payton is that Mike Kliss, and actually I think there was a Tom Pelissero as well, said that he is that all indications, this is from Mike Kliss, all indications are George Payton is the Broncos GM candidate to beat, provided he doesn't take the Detroit Lions job. He's probably the most experienced candidate, especially because he's going back to the late 90s and has worked with Rick Spielman for as long as he has. And there is a direct connection with the Broncos right now because he worked directly with Pat Shurmur back in 2017. Y'all remember Case Keenum and the Minnesota Miracle? George Payton and Pat Shurmur were on the same staff there. So there's an obvious Broncos connection there with the experience. Eric, what do you think about him?
So one thing that I really like about him is that he's had his hands in everything. He's worked with the college scouting department. He's worked on contracts. He's worked on veteran player acquisition. He's worked in the pro scouting department. He's worked with everything. So he knows everything, but he has experience in everything. So that is probably the most attractive thing about him. My concern is some of these bad things that Rick Spielman does and him potentially bringing those with him. Some of the contracts the Vikings have handed out have been atrocious. Yep. Just look at that Kirk Cousins one. Yep. And again, it's much like Champ Kelly with trading up to get Mitchell Trubisky and missing on that. It's not all on him, but it is something that you do have to sit there and be a little bit concerned about. And it's not just Kirk Cousins' contract. There were plenty of others that were terrible contracts, terrible moves for them, especially of late. They've had some solid drafts, but not great drafts. So it's been very hit or miss for the Vikings of recent years. And that's the concern with him. It's not that, and that's just enough to put him as my number 3 guy for general manager. My biggest thing is again, just everything that he picks up with Rick Spielman. And part of me thinks he's going to end up taking this Lions job because he's very close to Rick Spielman and his family. And Rick Spielman's brother, Chris Spielman, is, I believe, the CEO of the Detroit Lions. And so there's that direct connection there, being very close to the family, going and working under one brother, getting a promotion to go work with the other brother. So I kind of think that's what's going to end up happening. And plus, from some stuff that's been going around, is it sounds like that Payton wants to be able to go get his coach, his guy, and that Vic Fangio, obviously, he's safe for this year. So that may be a confliction there.
Yeah. To me, if you're going to bring in George Payton, to me that sounds like more continuity than anything because I don't think Payton's going to be aggressive enough in his first year. He doesn't have that kind of a stamp. To me, he did
going to go overpay a veteran quarterback.
Exactly. That's kind of where I was going with this. Was it like if you want a guy that's going to go and get a new quarterback for the Broncos, George Payton's not going to be the guy because he's going to go get a veteran guy. See Kirk Cousins, quite honestly. See Case Keenum as well. So that's the direction that he's probably going to go. As far as his drafting, they've done a really good job in Minnesota over the last few years. Just really playing to the board. and going and getting the guy that they have highest rated on their board. They obviously hit on Justin Jefferson this year. Ezra Cleveland played some big valuable snaps. He was a big part in going and getting Harrison Smith, Anthony Harris on the defensive side of the football, Xavier Rhodes as well at the cornerback position. They kind of missed on what's the former Michigan State kid. I cannot think of his name. Dang it. I wish Mackenzie Alexander, I know as well, the Clemson kid. Trey Waynes, the Michigan State kid that they brought in. They missed on him just a little bit, but he's still a pretty decent player. As far as him bringing in free agents, I'm not exactly sure off the top of my head the big free agents that he's brought in. They obviously did well with the linebacker Anthony Barr, Eric Kendricks as well. They moved on at the right time from Everson Griffin without paying him a big contract. So Payton's got his hands in pretty much everything, and for him to be a part of that, I really like Payton, but at the same time, I would rather go with Fontenot and Champ Kelly above George Payton. I have him as the number 3 guy as well. Going to number 4 here, Brian Stark. The Broncos, let's see here. He's spent 8 seasons in Denver in the scouting department, 4 seasons as the director of college scouting. So that's a big thing, especially over the last few years with the Broncos in their drafting department. He was a national scout from 2012 to 2015, primarily in the Western region. So looking at the teams in the Pac-12 Mountain West, some Big 12 stuff as well. But one thing that I do like about him is he has an extensive coaching background. He was with the San Diego State University from 2000 to 2008 in multiple different roles, including quarterbacks coach and wide receivers coach. And then he was the offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach in Yale from 2009 to 2011. Not a very extensive resume from Brian Stark. Eric, what do you think about him?
I think he's just the guy to just be that in that homegrown interview. I don't think that he's got much of a shot of it all, and just kind of be, I just don't think it's much of a shot. I think that he's a guy that maybe they'll look at for a promotion, with the new staff, because I'm sure whoever they bring in, they'll want to make some other changes to the front office, and maybe this is a move where they go for that. Probably make him he's the director of pro scouting, right?
Director of college scouting right now.
Director of college scouting. So you'd probably make him the director of all scouting. I can't remember what the actual position is called, but just kind of promote him or something like that. Maybe that's what the interview's for. And it's the same thing with the other guy, just to kind of get him out of the way too. Is
Dave Ziegler from the New England Patriots. Yeah, he's the assistant director of player personnel in New England right now. Spent 4 years as the director of pro personnel and 3 seasons as the director of pro scouting. He broke out in Denver under Josh McDaniels, by the way, back in 2010. That was his first job, was an area scout, I think, or director of college scouting under Josh McDaniels, and we all know how that ended. So
yeah. And my biggest thing with him is that I think it's just kind of a way to get an idea about some stuff Patriot way, things like that. And I think that with their Nick Caserio or whatever his name was taking the Texans job, I think that he'll probably be first in line to take over as general manager of the Patriots.
Yeah.
So it's just these two guys. I think there's a big gap between Patton, the Saints guy, and the Bears guy, Kelly, and these two. I think that it is a very big gap between them. And I just don't expect either of them to really get either of the open positions in the front office. And it wouldn't surprise me if Denver ends up hiring 2, one to replace Elway as the general manager, one to replace Matt Russell as the director of player personnel. So that wouldn't surprise me. But again, I just don't think that these two are going to be that again. And also Brian Stark, maybe a promotion, but we'll see.
Excuse me. So to me right now, given that the Broncos have to replace 2 people, not only John Elway, but also Matt Russell, who retired, to me, it's Terry Fontenot is the guy that I want most as the general manager. And I want Champ Kelly coming in as the director of player personnel and pro personnel, essentially the assistant and general manager to Terry Fontenot, because I think Terry Fontenot with his with the business degree that he does have, him going to the Stanford Business School and executive education program for executive managers, I think that experience has a little bit of some say to me. And also, the one thing that gets me there is some of the contracts that they've handed out. They haven't done a really good job, and I don't think Terry Fontenot has the experience there. But with Champ Kelly having the experience in both sides of things, where, the general manager, he's the final decision maker. Champ Kelly being able to delegate that responsibility to multiple sides underneath that, I think that kind of fits better to me. Also, from the sound of it, in a lesser role, Champ Kelly is a very player-friendly kind of a person. He's always been a guy that players want to come and talk to. As far as a general manager, which it's not just player and personnel, it's not just the coaching staff and stuff like that. I think there's a business aspect to it that, as far as like club operations, how the money's spent and stuff like that Terry Fontenot has an upper hand in, where Champ Kelly, as far as a player's kind of a person, to be able to go and relate to these guys, delegate some responsibilities underneath that, and stay away from dabbling into the financial aspect of it. That's the way that I would like to see it, is Fontenot first as a GM and Champ Kelly as the assistant GM and the director of pro personnel. Eric, what do you think about that?
I actually kind of agree with that. I personally would go like George Patton or Champ Kelly. I'm sorry, you said Champ Kelly as the player personnel, not the GM, correct?
The player personnel and Fontenot as the GM.
Yeah. See, I kind of would look at it the other way because of the fact that Fontenot doesn't have that experience in the college side of things. Okay. That I wouldn't want him as a general manager. But if with Patton or Kelly, like, you can put either one as whatever. But yeah, Fontenot definitely the player personnel, the director of player personnel, and then because that way he can learn the college aspect of it too, even though he's probably been picking some of it up. And then Champ Kelly, he's kind of had his hands on a little bit of everything. He can be in that general manager role.
So unless I'm missing something, I haven't got a notification on my phone.
No, it didn't happen.
Okay, so error. This comment saying we just hired Champ Kelly. Apparently that has not happened. I'm not going to confirm or deny that that's happened. Champ Kelly would be one of the guys that obviously we really like. Now, Eric, I heard something else kind of interesting, and this is from Adam Schefter regarding the ongoing situation in the world with everything that we know with CV and how people are not being able to travel across the country at will, and how the entire hiring process of, general managers, head coaches and stuff like that, the scouting personnel and everything. Typically what you would see is a guy like a team would travel to, they travel to like San Francisco or Dallas or so we'd fly to San Francisco, do an interview, take a guy to dinner. We'd then the next day fly to Dallas. That's not the scenario right now. Everything's happening on Zoom meetings and all virtually. Why are the Broncos not necessarily interested in getting more interviews, at least at this particular point? I mean, Thomas Dimitrov from the Atlanta Falcons, you have John Dorsey as well, Rick Smith. There's a bunch of different veteran candidates, and it doesn't seem like, as of right now, outside of George Payton, that the Broncos are looking at a veteran kind of a guy. Is that something that you wanted to maybe kind of look at, or is this just such a finite detail that everyone's kind of overthinking here?
I think everyone's just overthinking it a little bit. I think that basically all the veteran general managers, I think they were speculated on, but I don't think it was ever the desire for the Broncos to go that way. It seemed like that with the changes that they've wanted to get fresh blood in there. New eyes, guys who've not done the job before, and have them grow and adapt. I mean, they have Vic Fangio, who just finished his second year as a head coach, and maybe they can grow together as a coach and general manager duo. So we'll see what happens there. I just didn't think that a general veteran was an option. And I think that in terms of some other guys, I think that maybe they just didn't look way at some other fresh blood guys, either because of maybe they asked and got turned down, and that just hasn't been made news or something, or they just crossed them off the list themselves after they doing a little bit of a deeper research into a bigger background check, that they just decided, hey, this guy, he doesn't really fit what we're looking for.
Right.
So could be a couple things there. I definitely thought that they would cast a little bit of a wider net. I was kind of thinking about 10 interviews, but for whatever reason, they think that these 5 are it. And obviously there's the 3 guys that I really think that it's going to be who it is. And we'll probably see an announcement, since somebody asked, I think sometime early to mid next week.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Mitch Mann is actually the one that said that. I'll pull this up here. When should we expect the decision to be made by? I would guess middle to late next week. I think that they're going to kind of do some due diligence a little bit more on some of these other guys, maybe do a second interview with somebody that they really like. And who knows? It's still so very early in this process. This news broke, Monday, I believe, that John Elway is going to step down. We're now Friday. We're only 4 days away from that. So, give it a week, maybe 10, 12 days, something like that, and we might see some more movement on that front. It really wouldn't surprise me to see another guy get his name dropped. And Adam Peters was a guy that I really liked, but didn't he already sign?
I haven't seen anything official, but there's a lot of people talking about how he's going to the Panthers, but I haven't seen anything official.
Well, him and Matt Rule were good friends. I think they were at UCLA together there for a while. So that was an obvious connection. I think they're buddies. I might be thinking of the wrong guy, but Adam Peters to Carolina sounds right. But I think that's going to do it for the conversation regarding the general managers. Now, another bit of information that kind of dropped today was the all-pro rosters for 2020. Dropped today, and the Broncos got represented in the second team aspect by none other than your boy and my boy, and the one that we always continue to get hated on for, Garrett Bowles. And Garrett Bowles made the second team All Pro. I didn't see the first team. The biggest snub to me on this one is Justin Simmons not getting named at least to the second team All Pro. He had another great season, 5 interceptions. A million tackles from what it seemed like, even though it wasn't quite that much. But, Garrett Bowles, after everything that we went through over the summer, after all the vitriol that we damn near got our show suspended for clapping back at some people and stuff like that. That really is the most vindicating thing. I mean, go back to the episode where we were projecting the 53-man roster where to find out more if you really want to know more. But the fact that after everything that has happened, and we predicted that he was going to play at a high level, and I even said at that particular time he's going to play at an all-pro level this year, and to see that is incredibly vindicating.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Obviously, we've been staunch reporters for a while. Even though we did when we first started, before we were live, we had that one podcast where we both ripped him to shreds over what he needed to work on, and then not long after that, we started to see the improvements and we would talk about it and we would just be told we were wrong and all this stuff like that, which it continues to happen. It's moved on to another player. But yeah, after all the hate that we got, it's kind of obviously a self pat on the back for us a little bit, but obviously we're very happy for Garrett Bowles and
absolutely.
He's put the work in and he definitely deserves it. And just nice to see. Now, I actually disagree about Justin Simmons being a snub. And it's not that his play exactly didn't deserve it. Obviously, the interceptions are hard to sit there and argue with. My biggest thing is that to start the year and end the year, he wasn't good. He definitely was not the same. Probably the first 3 games and definitely the last 2, maybe 3 games. He definitely wasn't the same Justin Simmons caliber level player that we know of. The one interception, I think, against the Raiders, it was definitely right place, right time.
Yeah.
His coverage was kind of off. His run defense was off. And it just seems like watching them, it's well known that the Broncos had some changes made to their defensive coverage schemes. And I think that they kind of changed Justin Simmons' role a little bit to help cover for those issues with the poor play at cornerback. And I think that really impacted him not being able to kind of do not necessarily his own thing, but kind of do his own thing. And it kept him from doing that. And that's what happened. And another guy that I think that was deserving. I definitely think he should have made All-Pro, first team All-Pro if he didn't get hurt. Was Bryce Callahan? He was the best nickel corner this year, and it's not all that close really. I mean, he was a shutdown nickel corner when he moved to the boundaries when he gave up catches, which that may have seen him be kept off a little bit, but yeah, he definitely was deserving, and then he got hurt, which obviously sucks. And in my opinion, there is no other Broncos player that is even close to being deserving.
No, not at all. I mean, excuse me. You see it. Obviously, you have the unanimous guys, Aaron Donald and Travis Kelce. I'm curious to see who the first team All-Pro left tackle was, because honestly, I I figured that's who it was going to be, was David Bakhtiari. But interior defensive lineman, no, you're not going to get anyone there. Bradley Chubb, yeah, he had a pretty solid season, but at the same time wasn't nearly good enough to be an all-pro. Just hard to see anybody else that could be a snub. Justin Simmons is probably the only guy that I could actually see being a snub with the 5 interceptions. And I understand where you're coming from with that. Statistics do matter, and he was still one of the best Broncos defensive players. The scheme switch really did hinder him. Going more to 2-man underneath, and instead of keeping that match quarters aspect where he could ride and work more towards the middle of the field and stuff like that, opportunistically taking the football away really kind of hurts when you're in 2-man under as compared to that match quarters cover 4. But at the same time, very proud of Garrett Bowles, very, very glad for him, very happy for him to finally get some recognition for the high quality play that he has had. Yeah, it doesn't sound right when you think about it. Like, if you hear me say it, Garrett Bowles was actually a pretty damn good left tackle for his first 3 years in the NFL. Like, honestly, he had some.
He was solid.
Yeah, he was solid. I'm not saying top 5, at least top 10 though. He was a solid. I firmly believe that he was at least a top 10 left tackle as far as pass protection, and also in the running game. The holding penalties and the sometimes where he missed assignments and stuff like that really kind of hindered that, and people really got down on the holding penalties more than anything. To see it all round together and to see him put the work in and to humble himself and to not only get his coaching staff involved and to help him grow, but to have his wife step in as well, where she was rushing the passer on him. I mean, he was doing pass pro sets in the kitchen while they were making dinner barefoot. Like most people, you'll hear like Luis Vasquez says, yeah, I did a pass set today in the kitchen, whatnot. No, Garrett Bowles was doing that every single day barefoot so that he could understand and feel on the hard tile floor in his kitchen where his weight was at on the balls or the heels of his feet. Like, he went into incredible depth of trying to improve his technique this year, and it paid off. And I'm very proud of the guy. I'm very happy for him too.
Yeah, I definitely agree on that. I mean, I've talked about it on here before, but putting that work in of when you can't go be with the team, knowing what you need to work on, and having your wife help you, like, there's some players on the Broncos that watching their play this year, it's obvious that wasn't the case. They weren't able to do that. And it wasn't much different. I mean, Garrett Bowles, he had a lot to work on. He had a lot to improve on. He had a new offense to work on, to learn as well. And he did all that. And now here we are, second team All-Pro. Congratulations to him. He is definitely deserving of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to see if I can grab a couple of comments here. And if not, here we go. Brittany Bolin is doing the background checks on these general managers. And this is kind of a newsworthy thing to me. There was a lot of speculation with her not being involved in the interview process because it's going to be Joe Ellis and John Elway and Vic Fangio doing that. And Brittany Bolin is not a part of that. And to me, at first, it seemed like that was a major oversight in the trust with Joe Ellis, as far as not including her if she's actually a true, legitimate candidate for taking over the Broncos as far as the owner is concerned. Not having her in this capacity where she's in the interview process and seeing that with his great learning experience. The problem is legally she's not able to do that. With the ongoing litigation from between Beth Bolin Wallace and the trust and her and Brittany's standing within the organization, she's not allowed to be in those interview processes anyways. So for her to do the background checks on these general managers and get the information out to you guys way more in depth than what we did today, that right there shows that the Broncos still want to have her in as a high up figure within the organization and potentially as an ownership prospect. It doesn't mean that they're going to sell the team immediately. It doesn't mean that she's not, they don't trust her as far as making these kind of decisions. Legally, they can't allow her to be there. So let's just do away with that. Let's see here. What else do we got? Eric, do you got anything else? Have you seen?
Yeah, I've been looking up Desean Watson stats just I'm stuck on thinking about how good he can make this Broncos offense.
Man, it'd be great.
In every advanced efficiency stat, he's top 5.
Yeah.
And off the top of my head, I'm trying to remember. I think he's the only quarterback in the NFL that was top 5 in all of them. I think Patrick Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers, they missed out on one. But, I mean, kept clean, under pressure, play action, all that stuff. Man, it would be so good. But anyways, that's beside the point. I do see somebody talking about getting Gregory Rousseau. Yeah. And then somebody else says he's the number 1 edge rusher. I don't think he's the number 1 edge rusher anymore this year. He was. But I definitely think that depending on the scheme, Kwity Paye has probably beat him out. I think Aziz Ogilari is probably up there. Ronnie Perkins out of Oklahoma, if he declares, will probably push for it. And I think, in my opinion anyways, Joseph Osai is actually higher than he is. Very, very, very raw. Great athlete, very raw.
Yeah.
And then somebody asked about Kyrie Cleveland's future. It's definitely I think it's on an upward track based on this year, but it's still going to take a lot of time. We got to see what he can still do. I think he will have a bigger role next year, and we got to see what he'll do with that before saying he'll be much more than probably a 4th, 5th, or 5th receiver.
So going back to the edge receiver or the edge defender here, Kwity Paye over Gregory Rousseau. I can see that with the technical refinement, but I think that there's a lot more versatility and scheme diversity with Rousseau than there is Kwity Paye. I see him as a 6 or 7 technique defensive end and a even front in a single gap defense where he's not going to ask to do a whole lot. The athleticism is there. The refinement in his game is there. I'm not sold on Kwity Paye over Rousseau in any way, shape, or form. I also see Rousseau in Miami sliding down, and he'll play at like a 1 or a 3 technique, and they'll rush him from the inside on some twists and stunts and stuff like that. Not necessarily his best role by any stretch of the imagination, but the length and the strength and the just sheer athleticism of Rousseau has him way over Kwity Paye in my particular opinion. But anyways, guys, I think that's going to do it for us tonight. I'm actually starting to not feel too great, and I hope that my voice sounds at least decent. But anyways, guys, thank you all for joining the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. You can follow me on Twitter at Sanderson MHH, for Erick at Erick Trickel. Don't forget to follow at DVDD_pod. It's the easiest way to keep up with what's going on with the Dove Valley Deep Divers. Also at Mile High Huddle for instant news and analysis on your Denver Broncos from your favorite Mile High Huddle personalities, including me and Erick, Nick and Carl, Luke, Chad, and Zach, the whole gang, James Campbell every now and again as well. Again, gentle reminder, huddleuppod.com. Go get your merch. Facebook supporters, become a supporter at facebook.com/Mile High Huddle. And if you're not willing to do anything like that, everybody should be doing these 3 things. Subscribe, wherever that is. YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch. It doesn't matter. Subscribe to Mile High Huddle. Like every video you guys see. And if you love it, share it. Share it out, get it in front of as many Broncos fans as humanly possible, because that in and of itself is the easiest way to help the show and the entire Huddle Up Podcast Network grow. Now, Erick, before we get out of here, first things first, I want to ask, what do you think of the wild card weekend? Who do you got in a few of these games? And also, any last words?
I'm going to skip over the wild card part because I don't even know who's playing who. Denver was eliminated. I stopped caring about the playoffs. I'm focused on draft, which there's a couple questions here I want to get to. Our pal asked, have made the top 5 safeties for the draft yet? It's not top 5 safeties, but I did. It is made. It is waiting to get published and everything. It is 5 safeties for the Broncos to draft. My top 5s and stuff like that, they'll be coming out way down the road, probably March, April. And then K-Hop asked, do you think Drew Lock can have a Josh Allen comeback story? Josh Allen hasn't had a comeback story. Josh Allen showed progress each and every year. Drew Lock hasn't. So it's not really a comeback story. If you want to look for a comeback story, probably something like Ryan Tannehill, Derek Carr, Alex Smith. Those are probably the ones that you want. And time will tell with Drew Lock.
Not even Derek Carr. Derek Carr showed improvement, and yeah, he did have a down year after the Raiders jettisoned all of his talent, including Amari Cooper and Michael Crabtree. They got rid of Jared Cook too. He had nobody to throw the football to last year. He had no weapons at all. Josh Jacobs was it.
Okay, we got a Derek Carr stand here.
I am a
go back into your hole.
I am a Stan. I heard an interesting comparison talking to a friend of mine the other day. And quite honestly, it makes a lot of sense here. And it really is going to depend on Drew Lock harnessing that athleticism and using his legs a little bit more. What do you think about if the Broncos were to have some patience with him and they actually did let him develop a little bit more? Alex Smith in the San Francisco 49ers. And he was not very accurate, made a lot of bad decisions, and was not necessarily the greatest player, but he kept him alive with his legs. I think that Drew Lock can be a more arm talent Alex Smith if he has the time to develop. I really do.
I'm not sure he has the smarts or the athleticism.
That's the problem.
Alex Smith had sneaky good athleticism.
Oh, yeah. I think Drew Lock has sneaky good athleticism.
I don't see it. Maybe, like, I don't know. I'm not trying to be too controversial anymore with my opinions on Drew Lock, so we'll see what happens. We'll wait for that. I mean, obviously, we don't know what's going to happen. We don't even know if Drew Lock's going to be on the team this year, so we'll figure it out. I think he will be, but I mean, you never know.
I do too. I think Lock's going to be on the team, and I think that there's going to be some competition, whether it's a rookie or a veteran guy. Nick Foles, if they hire Champ Kelly to the front office, Nick Foles is an option there.
And then before we get out of here, just one more comment. Then I have a couple little announcement things. Aubrey Lopez says, "Are you going to stream again before the Monday game?" We won't. We stream it. We are live every Friday. On Sunday, Monday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays are Chad and Zach, the leaders of the group. On Saturdays, tomorrow night, it'll be Nick Kendall and Luke Patterson. And then on Tuesdays, it'll be Nick Kendall and Carl Dummler. So we have a pod every single night. Our night, it just happens to be Friday. Yep. And then for an announcement for next Friday, I'll be turning 29. You guys get to spend an hour of my birthday with me. How fortunate for you guys. Not really.
I'm dreading this. I am dreading this.
But it's actually, it won't be just me. We're gonna hopefully have Nick Kendall on. It depends on his work schedule and everything. Yep. But guys, it's that time of year. The draft, it's in full force. It's our first live mock draft, guys. We're gonna be doing it, and the structure for this year might be a little bit different. You guys will still have a loud say in who gets selected, and depending on how it goes. But the whole say won't be just up to you guys. This year. So just keep that in mind. But you guys will have a very loud say about it. I'll just basically be the scout. Nick Kendall will as well if he joins us. But yeah, it's our first live podcast. And then 2 weeks from now, the week after the 22nd, is a special. I'm not sure if it's going to be a Dove Valley Deep Divers, a Huddle Up pod. I'm not sure what it's going to be, but all of us podcasters are going to be live for probably about 20 hours or so. Not really, probably going to be a couple hours at least, going over some draft stuff for you guys. So make sure you guys tune in for that as well.
Yeah,
but until then, until next Friday, you guys have a great and wonderful weekend. Be safe out there. And hopefully you guys get through your work week next week. And hopefully I will as well. Hopefully. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. As far as the playoffs are concerned, go Bills. Please go Bills. Go Josh Allen. Love that guy being from Wyoming and Washington.
Who's he? Never heard the name before.
Not one time have I ever heard a comparison from Drew Lock to Josh Allen. Like never.
Who's this Josh Allen you speak of?
He's only a top 3 quarterback right now. But anyways, guys, that's going to do it for us on the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast.
Whoa. Not expecting that to end the show. Whoa.
They're trolling you. I'm trolling you.
All right, guys. Good night and have a good one.
Anyways, guys, that's going to do it for us on the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. Y'all stay safe. Take care. Have a great weekend. And as always, go Broncos. We'll see you guys next week. Same time, same place. Get hyped for a new mock draft from all of us. We'll see you later.
Join Broncos Country's Deep Divers at milehighhuddle.com to keep the conversation going.